later this afternoon, President Trump is going to meet with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who's in Washington today. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer head to Malaysia to talk to Chinese counterparts. What Greer says about China's recent rare earth export controls. Day 22 of the government shutdown. Federal workers line up at food banks amid missing paychecks. Senators will soon vote on a bill to pay federal employees who are still working. Chaos breaks out on both coasts during ICE operations, including protests and a shooting. The latest from the front lines of immigration enforcement across the country. New York City mayoral candidates will face off in a final debate before Election Day. What to look out for and why this race looks to be holding more national significance. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has called on the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to take a tougher stance on China. We discuss this.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. President Trump is set to meet with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who is in Washington today. This morning, Rutte had talks with two senators from each side of the aisle. Democratic Senator Jeanine Shaheen says the Foreign Relations Committee advanced 3 bills regarding the Ukraine war earlier today. Here's the senator.
One would declare Russia a state sponsor of terrorism because of their kidnapping of Ukrainian children. And the second would allow us to move forward using the repossessed assets from Russia to support Ukraine in this war. And the third would be to take an effort at China to stop the war effort.
And Rutte spoke to media after a meeting with U.S. senators in Washington, D.C. During his remarks, Rutte praised Trump and said NATO has been renewed and reinvigorated since he took office in January.
Since President Trump was re-elected, NATO has been renewed, reinvigorated. We decided in The Hague under his leadership to spend 5% on defense, therefore also basically equalizing what Europeans and Canada are spending on defense with the U.S., so the Europeans and the Canadians stepping up. Also when it comes to Ukraine, the President deciding to send weapons again to Ukraine, but paid for by allies. We are working very hard on that project. The first couple of billion of weapons already shipped into Ukraine from the US, paid for by allies. Well, I have total confidence in President Trump. And he's the only one who can get this done. He is the leader of the most powerful nation on earth. You're all citizens of the most powerful nation on earth, the most powerful economy, the most powerful military, and you have a president with a lot of experience because of his first term in office and who has a clear vision on bringing this war to a durable and lasting end. He wants that. He wants to end the bloodshed. He wants to end killing. And he knows how important it is. And this is a big deal for him, for all of us. So his leadership here is crucial. He is clearly providing it. And he has to dialogue with all the leaders. He has to dialogue with Putin, he has to dialogue with Zelensky, exactly as he did in Gaza, putting pressure on all relevant parties to get the deal done. And that's exactly what he is doing here.
Rutte said he is in D.C. to help Trump in whatever capacity he can to try to negotiate peace between Russia and Ukraine. His leadership here is crucial. He is clearly providing it, Rutte added.
Trump will have to meet both Ukrainian and Russian leaders and expects a lot of discussions ahead of a peace deal. It will not end tomorrow, Rutte said. Ukraine says Russia launched more than 400 drones and nearly 30 missiles in an overnight attack, killing 6 people. The air assault targeted its energy infrastructure, the latest in Russia's effort to cripple the country's energy system before winter. In the Kyiv region, rescuers discovered the bodies of 3 people, including 2 children, after a strike set a private house ablaze. Officials says the victims were a woman and her 2 daughters, and an infant of 6 months and a girl of 12 years old. Ukraine says it downed 16 missiles and more than 330 drones, and other missiles directly hit targets. The attack on the Kyiv region and other cities came a day after President Trump put his planned meeting with Russia's leader Vladimir Putin on hold. Ukraine's President Zelensky said today that President Trump's call for Ukraine and Russia to stop at the current front lines was a good compromise.
Now to go to political decisions. I mean, peace negotiations, diplomatic way how to stop Putin. That's why we had the long conversation. After our conversation, you saw messages, public messages from Trump. He proposed stay where we stay and begin conversation. I think that was good compromise, but I'm not sure that Putin will support it, and I said it to the president.
The Ukrainian leader also discussed the overnight attack, saying a kindergarten in the center of Kharkiv was hit. Zelensky was speaking in Oslo before traveling on to Sweden. He will discuss a possible export deal there with the Swedish Prime Minister at Swedish defense industry group Saab. Saab is the maker of fighter jets, missile systems, anti-tank weapons, and other equipment. Russia announces carrying out a major training exercise involving nuclear weapons. Just yesterday, President Trump said plans for a second summit between him and Russian President Vladimir Putin are being put on hold. Today's drills included practice launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are capable of striking the United States. Putin emphasizes that the maneuvers have been planned in advance, but they came just hours after Trump said plans for a summit in Budapest are on hold. Trump says it's because he didn't want it to be a, quote, wasted meeting. Russian officials agreed, but added that preparations for a summit continued. Throughout the war, Putin has frequently issued reminders of Russia's nuclear weapons as a warning signal to Ukraine and the West. NATO has also been conducting nuclear deterrence exercises this morning. Republican New York City mayoral candidate Curtis Sliwa is rejecting calls to withdraw from the race. Here's more from NTD's Arlene Richards.
Many political observers have been calling on Republican nominee Curtis Sliwa to withdraw from the New York City mayoral race. But Sliwa says no.
I am not dropping out under no circumstance.
Observers have been urging Sliwa to drop out in order to help independent candidate Andrew Cuomo defeat Democratic nominee Zohran Mamdani. Sliwa says he's even been offered money.
I've already been offered money to drop out. I said no.
He later told Fox News he might get Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg involved.
That means if you talk to me and you offer me a bribe, which is unethical, it could be illegal, and I'm going to have to run right to Alvin Bragg and his investigators, and you could be in double trouble.
Some observers are concerned that Sliwa's continued candidacy could split the vote and inadvertently help one of the other candidates. Sliwa said he's also being threatened.
Distant from that, with threats against Nancy and myself, I now have to have armed security with me, former NYPD officers. Never had that in my life.
Sliwa said the billionaires can't pick their candidate. He's trusting the people to make that decision. He says he will not drop out. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
New York City mayoral candidates will face off in a final debate before Election Day. Joining us to discuss is Brianna Lyman, elections correspondent for The Federalist and Claremont Institute Publius Fellow. And we have Mike Leon, NTD News contributor and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. So Mike, Brianna, welcome. Thank you guys for joining us today. I'll start with you, Brianna. Can you tell us what you're going to be watching for in this debate?
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Cuomo handles Mamdani's slick talking. You know, one of the biggest issues for Cuomo right now is that Mamdani has done a really great job on the ground campaigning, reaching low propensity young progressives. Cuomo has not gotten out enough to do that. So I think what tonight's going to be about is whether or not Cuomo can reach those same young progressives and convince them in, an hour or two that he's more qualified than Mamdani, someone that these people may have actually met on the street or heard from more directly this campaign cycle.
So Mike, what about you?
Brianna's right. First off, good to see you guys on this afternoon. And Cuomo can't do it. Just to answer Brianna's overarching question, I think that's going to be one of the big watches tonight, because this campaign really boils down to, and it's being over magnified, let's be honest, it's a mayoral race. I know it's one of the biggest cities in the union, but it really boils down to an experienced person who has scandal, who, in Marjorie Taylor Greene's own words, how could Republicans even get behind Cuomo when the nursing home scandal that happened throughout the COVID pandemic. But he does have experience leading the state at the gubernatorial level versus, like Brianna just said, somebody who walked the entire length of Manhattan, somebody that has met with a lot of young voters and is turning out voters in different waves and blocks. And not only low propensity, but I would say other folks that have been disenfranchised, marginalized throughout the years. And then you have Curtis Sewell, who's just sitting there as a third candidate, who even President Trump, in his own words, has said is not a serious candidate, and he's, you know, siphoning off a good portion of this base. So I'm interested to see how the debate plays out tonight and how all three of them continue to explain a little bit more about their policy positions, especially Zoran on some of these ideas that he has for New York City.
So, Brianna, Mike said earlier that perhaps this is over magnified. How much of an impact will this last debate have on voters who choose on November 4th?
Yeah, I do think Mike is right to a degree that this entire election has been, you know, over magnified, but it's being over magnified because we're seeing someone who has won a, you know, Democratic nomination by being an outward socialist, right? This is a self-proclaimed socialist. He's a Marxist, and he now will be the mayor of New York, or America's greatest city. I do think that what's important to remember here is the New York Post came out with a poll, I believe it was this week, and they found that while Sliwa is in the race, Cuomo basically has no chance. If Sliwa was to drop out, I think Cuomo trails Mamdani by about 4 points. But what's more interesting is I think 78% of voters who are undecided are 55 or older. 55 or older are most likely not going to vote for Mamdani. They would likely split for Cuomo or Sliwa, which is why Sliwa getting out of this race would actually mean that Cuomo has a legitimate chance, right? Because you make it a binary choice, voters have to choose. Do they want a young radical socialist, or do they want someone who, yes, to Mike's point, had a horrible track record, you know, the last few years of his term in office, but otherwise he was pretty popular among Democrats.
So, Mike, what do you think here? Brianna pointed to the polls, and I'm sure Sliwa saw them too. Why is he saying that under no circumstance he's going to drop out?
Well, because it's America and we should put it up to the ballots, right? You know, Don, you know, I work at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation, right? More voices, more choices is our tagline. So we want to see more people actually be a part of the race and actually the democratic process take place. Brianna's not wrong about the math. I think we can all argue about whether or not polling and the snapshot in time that it does encapsulate is going to be accurate come November 4th on election night, right? Who knows if all of those voters would actually turn out for Cuomo or if they would stay home, right? We've seen that in other elections. So we truly don't know. It's an unknown, but it does make sense if you take a snapshot in time of a poll. I agree with Siwa about not dropping out. I think this is actually one of the years where, to the president's credit and what he said, that if you had an actual Republican candidate that, like a Siwa has a connotation in New York City as not being a serious politician. You know, he's just one of the guys. He was a guardian angel for a long time. He's never held any type of office at any type of city or any other level in New York City, but he's always been around the throes of New York politics. But if you had a serious Republican candidate that is running a little bit more on the president's platform, you could potentially have somebody that would unseat Andrew Cuomo. He wouldn't even have a chance in the independent lane, but for some reason, the Republican candidate is seen as the third party independent in the New York City mayor's race. So I don't know. I agree with Siwa about not dropping out, not because of the siphoning of votes. I agree that you put it up for the ballot and let's see how it shakes out come November 4th.
So, Brianna, how are you looking at the situation where Sliwa is saying he won't drop out? He's saying he's even gotten monetary incentives to do so.
I gotta be honest, I respect that Sliwa has strong convictions. I do think out of all the candidates, he would make the best mayor for New York City, but the math just isn't there. And if Sliwa loves New York City the way I do think he does, then he has to put his own political ambitions aside and look at the math and say, there is literally no path for victory for me forward. So do I want to watch New York City fall into the hands of a radical socialist, or do I want to give New York City a fighting chance? And I understand that voters should have the option to choose between all three candidates. However, there are a lot of split voters who say, well, I'm going to screw, Cuomo because I like Sliwa, but I hate Zoran Mamdani, not realizing that a vote for Sliwa ultimately is a vote for Mamdani. So I do think with that given that we're in crunch time, it's actually a little bit more beneficial to help voters have that binary choice. And I really do hope that Sliwa changes his mind.
So, Mike, I want to put on the thread that you brought up earlier that perhaps this race is over magnified. Why do you think that is, Exactly. Why do you think this race looks to be holding more national significance than previous races?
Well, there's a couple of things. Brianna knows this as well. I mean, it's 2025. It's an off year, right? We've got a couple of gubernatorial races. We've got some AG races that are happening in Virginia. And then we have the biggest city arguably in the world having its mayoral race. And we have, like Brianna's mentioned, a Democrat that was once popular, that everybody thought would be the future potentially of the party during those pressers back in 2020 in Andrew Cuomo, versus somebody who has been an assemblyman and has risen in this meteoric rise in the Democratic Party, which doesn't even want him to be a part of the Democratic Party. If you just look at some of the representatives in New York who haven't even endorsed him, which, by the way, I think endorsements are, as useful as the waste paper basket. I'm about to throw some paper in later. Those don't matter, but he's not even being endorsed by some of those people in the Democratic Party. So you've got this huge snowball and hurricane effect that's happening right now. It's 2025. There's a new administration in DC, and that administration is taking it out a little bit on some of the blue cities. This is the biggest blue city. The potential to elect a mayor who himself has said he's a democratic socialist, something that New York City has not had maybe since David Dinkins back in the 90s, who was kind of on that fringe line. And again, we're in a down year. It's not 2026. We don't have all the House and Senate races happening right now. So it's getting a little over magnified because this is one of the big ones, including New Jersey's gubernatorial race and Virginia, that will, as we get a little bit closer, start to get over magnified as well. But we just don't have that many races right now. And there's a zoom out of this in terms of, if Mamdani wins, will the Democrats actually first work with him, endorse him, but then also, what does the future of the party look like? Does it look like more like Zoran Mamdani, or does it return back to the Chuck Schumers of the world, which have gotten us into the minority?
So, Brianna, what do you think about that? This idea about whether Mamdani could become the future of the Democratic Party if he wins?
Yeah, I think that this is an opportunity for Democratic leadership, so Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, to actually reject far-left candidates like Zohran Mamdani that have really alienated voters across the country. You go back to November 2024, not only did Donald Trump win the popular vote in the Electoral College, but the entire country shifted right, which means that there is no mandate for Democrats to, for some reason, go the opposite direction. So I think that if Schumer and Jeffries and other political leadership had any political instinct left, they would have used this as an opportunity to reject Mamdani types and to, unfortunately, embrace Cuomo, who is part of that old guard of the Democratic Party. I think Tom Suozzi is one of the only Democrats from New York that has, openly said, I'm not going to support Mamdani. He has it right because he understands, he represents a rather purple district. He understands that average Americans, even if they're Democrats, they don't subscribe to socialism. They want a classic, 1990s Democrat.
All right, Mike, we're just about out of time here. Broadly speaking, what do you think NYC voters are looking for in this election?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, right? The former New York City kid himself, Don. So, I was talking to a Jewish friend of mine that lives up in Riverside, and I asked him this, and we didn't even get into the Jewish voters and that voter block, but he said this Mamdani race is about a battle of progressive Jews that like him versus older Jewish folks that have money that realize he could potentially ruin the city. And when you think about that dynamic, it goes back to the way the primaries played out, where you saw people on the Upper East Side, Cuomo won by +4, whereas people in Prospect Heights, Crown Heights tend to be poorer communities, and Mamdani won those by like +20, +30 percentage points, right? So that's going to be the battle. The battle is going to be about affordability. Do we want to try something different in New York City? We can't afford to live here. Everything's too expensive. This is one of the most expensive states in the union, the second highest state tax in the union. What are we going to do about the things in New York City that make it more affordable to actually live here so that Mike Leon doesn't actually leave New York City and live in Florida like he does now with his family? And that is the problem. Mamdani's talking about that. He has a grassroots campaign about that. Cuomo has done things legislatively at the gubernatorial level, but he's not without scandal. And Marjorie Taylor Greene's old words, how can you forget about the scandal and elect somebody like that?
All right, Brianna, if you have any final thoughts real quick.
No, I think Mike is spot on. I think you might see a mass exodus of New Yorkers to Florida. I might be following Mike down there soon if Mamdani definitely wins.
All right, well, it's been a good conversation today. Brianna, Mike, thank you so much again for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chaos breaks out on both coasts during ICE operations, including protests and a shooting. The latest from the front lines of immigration enforcement across the country. Stay tuned.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality. A timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
So at the age of 5, I was sexually molested. I had my first child at the age of 15 and became homeless at the age of 16. The scariest part about not having a place to live was having a child and not having a place to live and not knowing where our meal was going to come from and where we're going to sleep. To be homeless as a teen, I didn't ask for that.
No young person should ever have to worry about having a safe place to sleep at night, or a warm meal to eat, or whether anyone cares about them. 1 in 10 young adults will experience a form of homelessness this year, and that's unacceptable. But the good news is there is an organization making a big difference, Covenant House.
Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night.
For over 50 years, Covenant House has been helping youth in crisis.
It was pretty tough, but Covenant House really helped me and really helped mold me into the woman I am today.
Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
I have no words to express how Covenant House changed my life. They gave me the love that I needed. They just really genuinely just wanted to help me succeed, and I'm succeeding.
Your $19 monthly gift is urgently needed to reach other young people who are facing unimaginable situations. Call or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Your support makes the work of Covenant House possible. Thank you for caring.
President Trump is heading to Asia. He's confirmed several stops on his upcoming tour, where he's expected to discuss trade, investments, and regional security. NTD's Daniel Monahan takes a closer look at the trip.
The first stop of President Trump's Asia trip is Malaysia, which is hosting the ASEAN summit from October 26th to the 28th. That's the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Trump is expected to attend on the first day. Malaysian officials have said that Trump is looking forward to joining the signing of a ceasefire deal between Thailand and Cambodia, one of several peace deals Trump helped broker. Conflict between Thailand and Cambodia broke out in July. 43 people were killed and 300,000 were displaced during 5 days of fighting. Next up is Japan. Trump is scheduled to travel there on October 27th for a 3-day visit. The trip will occur just after Japan's parliament elected the conservative Sanaya Takaichi. Takaichi said that the Japan-U.S. alliance is the cornerstone of Japan's foreign and security policy, and that she plans to strengthen ties. She is expected to meet with Trump on October 28th to talk about regional security. Japan has seen increased Chinese military activity around its territory in recent years, and ramped up joint drills with allies, including the United States, in response. The country signed a trade deal last month that lowers tariffs on Japanese goods to 15% in exchange for $550 billion in investments in the U.S. Then comes South Korea, which is hosting the APEC summit from October 31st to November 1st. Trump is expected to visit ahead of the summit from October 29th to the 30th. Trump is expecting to meet with Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping while there. Trump's planned meeting with Xi comes just days before a potential new tariff on Chinese goods goes into effect.
As of November 1st, China will have about 155% tariff put on it. And I don't think it's sustainable for them.
Trump says he wants to be nice to China.
But China's been very rough with us over the years because we had presidents that weren't smart from a business standpoint.
Trump also suggested yesterday that the meeting might not happen. An update on U.S.-Russia relations, President Trump said Tuesday he is holding off on plans to meet with President Putin in Hungary in the coming weeks.
No, I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time, so I'll see what happens.
The decision to hold off on the meeting was made following a call earlier on Tuesday between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Trump says he has advocated for using the current battlefield lines as the basis of a peace deal.
The battlefield lines, and you pull back and you go home and everybody takes some time off because you got two countries that are killing each other. Two countries are losing 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers a week. So we'll see what happens.
And NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte set to meet with Trump on Wednesday at the White House. Rutte made preparations to travel to Washington after Trump's meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky last week. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Besides President Trump, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer are also heading to Malaysia. They're going to meet with their Chinese counterparts to discuss China's rare earth export controls. Here's Greer discussing those export curbs on CNBC today.
It was incredibly aggressive. It was totally disproportional to anything that the U.S., the EU, or Canada, or anybody did. Because remember, these are global measures that the Chinese have put in place to purport to control the movement or export of any item containing certain rare earths from one country to another, right? Even if China is not one of the parties in the agreement.
Greer also said that China's measures violated a commitment that officials made months ago to keep supplying rare earth minerals. He also accused the Chinese regime of wanting to exert economic control over the world. Greer says the U.S. needs to rebalance trade with China after decades of very limited access to Chinese markets. But he noted there's still a good landing zone where the two countries can trade non-sensitive goods in a more balanced way. Vice President J.D. Vance and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promoting the Gaza ceasefire today in Jerusalem. Vance acknowledged incidents of violence in recent days, but expressed confidence in the peace plan. Here's the Vice President.
It's not easy. I never said it was easy, but what I am is optimistic that the ceasefire is going to hold and that we can actually build a better future in the entire Middle East. But that requires some work. So it's not about monitoring in the sense of, you monitor a toddler. It's about monitoring in the sense that there's a lot of work, a lot of good people who are doing that work.
We're just creating an unbelievable day after with a completely new vision of how to have the civil government, how to have the security there, who could provide that security there, again, with Israel taking care of overall security always. And we discussed that, and I think we have some very, very good ideas how to proceed. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's possible.
Vance also met with Israeli President Isaac Herzog as part of a number of high-level meetings in Israel. U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner are with the vice president. Since the ceasefire began on October 10th, the remains of 15 hostages have been returned to Israel. Another 13 still need to be recovered and handed over, a key element of the agreement. Questions remain over the peace plan, including disarming the Hamas terror group, the deployment of an international security force in Gaza, and who will govern the territory. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will travel to Israel to meet with Netanyahu on Friday. The Israeli government made the announcement today. We'll be keeping you updated on that visit. And federal immigration operations erupted into chaos on both coasts. Protesters clashed with agents in New York City, and gunfire broke out during a traffic stop in Los Angeles. Here's more.
In New York, a routine immigration enforcement sweep on Canal Street in Chinatown quickly escalated. Federal agents with ICE and Border Patrol moved in on street vendors accused of selling counterfeit handbags and electronics. Within minutes, crowds gathered, shouting and blocking agents' vehicles. Homeland Security later said the operation was part of a broader crackdown on sellers of counterfeit goods. DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin said agents arrested one person for assaulting an officer. But New York Mayor Eric Adams said his city was not involved in the immigration operation. He said that undocumented New Yorkers trying to pursue their American dreams should not be the target of law enforcement, and resources should instead be focused on violent criminals. While New York saw street protests, Los Angeles witnessed gunfire when a traffic stop turned violent. Officials say 44-year-old Carlitos Ricardo Parias, an illegal immigrant who had previously escaped custody, tried to ram his car into officers as they attempted to arrest him. The DHS says officers followed their training and fired defensive shots, and the man was shot in the elbow, and a U.S. Marshal was shot in the hand by a ricocheted bullet. Both are in the hospital. Parias faces 1 count of assaulting a federal officer. He has a considerable social media presence. According to local media, he has regularly documented federal immigration operations on his TikTok account and has more than 100,000 followers. McLaughlin has defended her agency's approach to immigration enforcement, saying officers aren't just going after random people.
When we say we want the worst of the worst out of this country, it's not just a talking point, it really is what it is. That's who we're going after. And these are not indiscriminate stops. We're not just walking on the sidewalk and picking up random people. We have intelligence, we have reasonable suspicion under the 4th Amendment of the Constitution. That's who we're going after.
The Los Angeles shootout and the New York protests come amid a surge in hostility toward ICE officers. Something President Trump's border czar Tom Homan told Newsmax is being fueled by divisive rhetoric from politicians and activists.
I think it's the cartels, but I also think it's the rhetoric, especially from elected mayors, elected governors, and elected congresspeople who want to compare ICE to terrorists and the Nazis. The far fringe on the left that become violent against ICE, they feel emboldened when the United States senator or a congressperson or a governor says ICE are Nazis and they're racist. That emboldens them to take more action against ICE officers.
Homan also said cartels are taking revenge on ICE by using internal gangs in the nation's largest cities to attack officers. According to Homan and the White House, attacks on immigration officers have risen more than 1,000% in the last few months.
Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins says the USDA will restart distributing aid to farmers that was frozen by the government shutdown. Rollins says the Farm Service Agency will resume operations tomorrow, processing farm loans and managing federal aid programs. She said President Trump will not let what she called the radical left Democrat shutdown impact critical USDA services while harvest is underway. The secretary added that more than $3 billion in aid will go out to farmers and that the administration is preparing a package for those hit by China's halt in soybean purchases. Trump earlier said soybeans will be a major topic when he meets Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in South Korea, although Trump said yesterday that the meeting may not happen. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has called on the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to take a tougher stance on China. We have a discussion on this after the break.
My name's Stacy, I'm 57, and I was adopted in 2020.
We were adopted in 2019.
And we were adopted in 2021.
We had a house, and it sounds crazy, but it wasn't a home. The one thing that Jake and Emma brought is it became a home.
When I met Dakota, he had just turned 14.
You weren't there for the first this and the first that. I missed the first words, but we got a lot of other firsts.
Watching her say, oh my God, I cannot believe I got my license. And she's like, I passed. And I'm like, girl.
See them grow. It is...
They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
You and you. Kids in the middle. What I thought was a complete life was nowhere near complete, but it is now.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Or how did I get here?
Done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk.
but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has called on the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to take a tougher stance on China. Joining us to discuss is Daniel Lacalle, chief economist at Treasury's hedge fund, international financial analyst, and author of the book Freedom or Equality. Good afternoon, Daniel. Always great to see you. So how is it that, let me ask you this, how is it that even though China is already the world's second largest economy, it continues to apply for low interest loans from the World Bank as a developing country?
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? I think that what Secretary Bessent is saying makes absolute sense. Is that it makes it is a completely disadvantage for the rest of the world to compete with China when China is at the same time getting all of the benefits of an emerging economy. When it is not an emerging economy, it's a fully developed economy, and it's also maintaining a number of barriers both to trade and to capital flows that are generating a very, very significant competitive advantage for China that certainly is not enjoyed by any other of its competitors. Imagine for Germany to see China that is now taking over the automotive sector and everything that has to do with electric vehicles, seeing that China is getting tremendous loans at very, very low rates to develop their industry, while Germany is suffering from regulatory and taxation burdens.
So, Daniel, I want to point to something specific. Bessent urged the organization to take tougher stances on China's state-driven economic practices. Can you describe for us some of those practices?
Oh, certainly. We all know that China is, on the one hand, an open economy, and at the same time, it is exceedingly closed. So, number of practices that are directly involving government intervention is that the government is consistently bailing out industries with elevated levels of working capital challenges. At the same time, it is also directing the investments of most of those businesses, and those businesses have to report what they do to the government, and their strategies have to comply directly with what the government requires of them. And also, the two elements that I think are very, very significant, particularly for exporters, is having a fixed rate for the currency and at the same time capital controls. So if you think about it, it's almost like an economy that is very open to the outside world, but at the same time it is exceedingly closed and enjoys a number of state subsidies that go well beyond the direct subsidies. It's not a subsidy in itself in which you can say that they have received such grant, but you're getting a tremendous subsidy both in the financing and also in the currency fixing. So those elements are very, very significant, enormous for an exporter. Think about it. Relative to the US, German, French, or UK exporters, no?
So those actions that you just described, do they conflict with the IMF's core mission, or does it align with its mission?
With the IMFs in particular, they can conflict directly because it's all state aid. And one of the things that the IMF is trying to promote is that there is as little state aid for international trade as possible, and that there is a free movement of capital to start with. That is the entire core of the strategy of the IMF. So freedom of movement of capital and freedom also of and open currency movements, all of those things are critical. So in essence, China is working within the boundaries of the World Bank and within the boundaries of the IMF, but with completely different rules compared with all of its other economies and the peers and the competitors.
I mean, so it's good that the Treasury Secretary is calling for a tougher stance. But can you talk to us about what leverage does the U.S. or the Treasury Secretary have over the IMF or the World Bank's policies?
That's very limited. Very limited. Unfortunately, as you know, and we have discussed a few times, international bodies have been moving toward a very dangerous approach to China, which is we're going to let them enjoy all these benefits and we're going to allow them to work with all these privileges relative to other nations because it will end up benefiting everybody through higher growth and higher international trade. However, as we have seen throughout all of this trade tensions, all of that has generated enormous levels of imbalances. Now the European Union is very worried about the fact that they're going to be flooded with exceedingly cheap Chinese products that are sold at lower prices than the production cost. All those things are important because one can understand that the IMF, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, all these international bodies, when China was a country that started opening its economy, they actually wanted to, in good faith, support the economy so that poverty would decline, so that the economy would open, etc. However, something happened between 2011 and 2014, which is that the Chinese economy stopped opening. It started closing. And it started closing very, very rapidly with all the different rulings of the Communist Party. And in particular, President Xi Jinping is very, very concentrated on this view of what is a state-organized economy that resembles an open economy, but in reality is statism disguised as open. No, so all of those things are a challenge. Unfortunately, the U.S. has very, very little leverage in this sense because a lot of the trading partners of the Chinese regime and also a lot of the partners in the BRICS nations are in a sense playing along with this privilege that we have mentioned. So it's very, very concerning. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to undo something that was a mistake at the beginning, from the beginning, which was to consider a fully developed economy, as China has been for a long number of years, as a developing economy and getting all the benefits that, African or Latin American nations that are way behind in terms of development are getting, and obviously at a much larger scale.
So Daniel, I just want to ask you one more question, and perhaps this is one of the more important ones. How did China, can you explain this for us, how did it get such preferential treatment from these organizations?
That's a very good question. And the answer is complex, but let me summarize it as much as I can. The Chinese regime has been exceedingly good at selling to the world something that it was not implementing inside. So basically, you read it all the time. You hear it everywhere. The Chinese government is talking about harmony. It's talking about open relationships. It's talking about multilateralism. It's talking about free trade, all these things all the time. It's talking about open economies and talking about an open financial system, while at the same time, its actions are completely different. And it's so interesting because within the mainstream media, within the financial sector, investment banks, international bodies, they seem to want to believe this message of openness, of harmony, of let's say, multilateralism and support for each other, when in reality, what is going on is, as a book that I have behind me, which is great, called We Have Been Harmonized, is that the economy has been closing and closing and closing almost at a feverish pace, particularly in the past 8 to 10 years.
Well, all right, Daniel, very good analysis today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Don. Always a pleasure.
The U.S. military conducted its 8th strike against an alleged drug vessel last night in international waters. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth detailed the operation on X. Hegseth posted a video showing a small boat carrying dark-colored packages. Footage captured the strike and showed the explosion that set the vessel on fire. Hegseth said the boat was trafficking drugs along a known narco-trafficking transit route in the Pacific. 2 people aboard the vessel were killed in the strike, bringing the total death toll to at least 34. 7 previous strikes have all targeted vessels in the Caribbean. Now, in recent years, the CCP's influence in U.S. government agencies is drawing growing concerns. The foreign agent case against Linda Sun is one of the highest profile, given her former senior role in the New York state government. On Monday, the Eastern District Court of New York held a pre-trial meeting for Sun. NTD's Flora Hua has the latest update.
A landmark foreign agent case may soon go to trial. Linda Sun is a former top aide to 2 New York governors, including Andrew Cuomo, who's running for New York City mayor right now, and also Governor Kathy Hochul. She's accused of acting as an unregistered foreign agent for China and receiving millions in kickbacks, along with her husband. The U.S. government's recent discovery, totaling tens of thousands of pages, was the focus of Monday's pre-trial meeting. Defense attorneys told the judge the sheer volume leaves them pressed for time just weeks before the trial. Prosecutors said they only recently accessed the key information from a locked iPhone and iPad after the defendants refused to provide passwords. The judge called last-minute materials normal and typical in a major case and said he could grant extra time for the defense, but he won't dismiss the case or penalize the government over it. More on Linda Sun's case. The U.S. government accuses Sun of furthering Beijing's interest while being a state official, including disclosing internal COVID-related meetings to Chinese diplomats and blocking Taiwanese officials' interactions with 2 New York governors. Court documents show Sun had attended multiple meetings hosted by China's United Front Work Department, a Chinese intelligence and propaganda arm. Sun's attorney argued her way to interact with the Chinese consulate shouldn't be taken issue with. He said he found at least 5 other governmental officials who handled their relationships with foreign consulates in a similar way to Sun. So he told the judge this is a common phenomenon within government offices. The judge dismissed the argument, saying 5 cases don't prove this is a universal practice. He added, the government might choose not to indict some cases for now, but that doesn't mean such behavior is lawful. Sun's husband, Chris Hu, is also facing multiple charges, such as money laundering and bank fraud. On Monday, the couple again pleaded not guilty. The judge says the trial is scheduled for early next month and could last for 3 weeks. Reporting from Brooklyn, New York, Flora Hua, NTD News.
The Chinese Communist Party's grip on China is showing cracks. Tonight, NTD's Steve Lance sits down with Stephen Mosher, a renowned China scholar who's been decoding the Chinese Communist Party since the 1980s.
It makes no sense for Xi Jinping himself, who has only the support of his faction, to begin removing members of that faction. The only sector of the Chinese economy that actually works according to market principles is the export sector. The export sector only works because of access to the American market. The Chinese economy is in for some very, very dark days ahead. And I believe that the sooner the collapse comes, the sooner Xi Jinping will be forced to either step back to what he called the second line or to be forced out of power altogether.
Uncover the truth tonight on Capitol Report with Steve Lance at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Turning Point USA's latest stop at Indiana University, Bloomington drew a large student crowd, setting the stage for a night of debate and discussion. Stay tuned.
With almost 4 decades in the spotlight, Cindy Crawford has never lost her stunning glow. With her gorgeous, age-defying skin, US Weekly says whatever she's doing, it's clearly working. How does her skin still look firm, smooth, and youthful at 58? It's meaningful beauty. And now, with new advanced formulas, it's better than ever, delivering our age-defying ingredients even deeper into the skin to fight wrinkles where they begin. Just wait until you see the difference meaningful beauty can make for you.
Instant hydration, instant plumping. My skin looks amazing. What I'm most proud of is over 5 million women have trusted Meaningful Beauty, and they're getting great results, and I get that feedback from them in airports, supermarkets, walking down the street, and I love it.
And today, we are celebrating 20 years of Meaningful Beauty with a brand new offer you don't want to miss. You can get the entire advanced Meaningful Beauty system with all 5 age-defying super treatments. And when you order today, you'll receive our Targeted Treatment Duo, a $128 value free. Introducing the Wrinkle Smoothing Capsules to target crow's feet, forehead lines, and lines around your mouth. Plus, you'll also get the new Skin Renewing Facial Tool with heat, massage, and red light to boost the absorption of the wrinkle smoothing capsules and reduce the appearance of puffiness. The Skin Renewing Facial Tool and the Wrinkle Smoothing Capsules together create Meaningful Beauty's amazing targeted treatment duo.
This plus this equals incredible results.
Get all this, a $300 value for just $49.95. But you must act quickly. Results guaranteed or your money back.
If you haven't tried Meaningful Beauty yet, this new offer is something you don't want to miss.
This special offer is not available in any store, so don't wait. Scan the code, call the number below, or go to meaningfulbeauty.com right now.
Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
The government shutdown hits day 22 with no end in sight. Senators will soon vote on a bill to pay those who are still working without checks. And Democrats are pushing for a second meeting with President Trump. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
Nearly a month into the government shutdown and 11 failed votes to reopen the government, federal workers are feeling the pinch of missing paychecks.
You know, with my rent due next week, I could take anything I can get. At this point, I haven't gotten a paycheck this month. So the free groceries is very important, very helpful.
Federal employees lined the street to a food pantry in Maryland. More than 1 million federal workers are either furloughed or are working without pay. Senate Leader John Thune has teed up a bill to pay those who are still on the job during the shutdown. But it's unclear if Democrats will support it. Democrat leader Chuck Schumer on Tuesday asked for a second meeting with President Trump.
Things get worse every day for the American people. He should sit down with us negotiate in a serious way before he goes away. The only way to solve this is sit down and negotiate with us in a serious way.
Trump welcomed the idea of meeting with Democrats again after 5 more senators break ranks and vote with Republicans to open the government.
You know, the country is so hot right now, and they've never voted against, you know, continuation. They've never voted against. They've never done that. They're doing this because they have Trump derangement syndrome. But I would love to meet. I would like to meet with both of them. But I set one little caveat. I will only meet if they let the country open. They have to let the country open.
Republicans accuse Democrats of being unserious in their proposal.
An alternative bill that spends $1.5 trillion and opens up free health care benefits to non-citizens. I mean, that is just a non-starter. That is going nowhere.
He says Schumer shot down his offer to vote on Obamacare subsidies without a guaranteed outcome. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
The government shutdown has frozen the Small Business Administration's lending programs across the country. The impasse is blocking around $2.5 billion from being dispersed to nearly 5,000 small businesses. The agency said small businesses in California are suffering the most, with more than $126 million not approved every week of the shutdown. This was followed by Texas, with loans worth more than $88 million blocked each week. Florida is losing loans worth more than $76 million. But Administrator Kelly Loeffler said small business confidence is at a 7-year high. She cited President Trump's agenda to end unfair trade deals, cut regulations, and reduce taxes. North Carolina Republicans have remapped one of the state's U.S. House districts. The redistricting comes as GOP lawmakers hope to pick up one more seat to maintain their majority. Democrats have responded by redrawing their own lines in blue states. A president's party historically loses seats in midterm elections, and Democrats need just 3 more seats to gain control of the House. Texas and Missouri have already revised their House districts to try to help Republicans win additional seats. Democratic-led California retaliated by asking the state's voters to approve a map revised to elect more Democrats. The Supreme Court is currently considering a redistricting case in Louisiana. The High Court's decision would have a nationwide impact on the practice of redrawing district lines, known as gerrymandering. The government shutdown has frozen the Small Business Administration's lending programs across the United States, blocking around $2.5 billion. We have a discussion on the impacts after the break. How come I don't hear the broadcast?